Israel chai, Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel chai, Am Israel. Od Avinu chai, Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu chai, Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu chai, Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu chai. Am Israel chai, Am Israel chai, Am Israel, Am Israel, Am Israel chai, Am Israel chai, Am Israel chai, Am Israel.
So many obstacles remaining, many questions still yet unanswered. Let's cross over to Rushdie Abu-Alouf, who's the BBC's Gaza correspondent currently based in Istanbul, and also our Middle East correspondent Yolande Knell joining us from Jerusalem. It's good to see you both on possibly what will be a historic day, but there are still so many questions unanswered. Yolande, when it comes to the actual approval of this deal, the Israeli cabinet has to get it over the line. They need to formally approve it. We already know that Israel's finance minister, hardliner Bezalel Smotrich, saying that he will not agree to this. So where are we when it comes to the Israeli cabinet?
Well, I should say, first of all, we've just had the announcement come through from Al Qahira, which is the Egyptian news agency, which is affiliated with intelligence, saying that the ceasefire in Gaza is now in effect. We haven't seen any pictures coming through from Sharm el-Sheikh of that, but that does seem to be the important announcement that we're waiting for. And it sets in trail this, set of events now. We should have the Israeli Security Cabinet meeting at 5 o'clock local time. That's 3 o'clock UK time in the afternoon. They have to give the approval to this deal before it is then voted on by the entire cabinet. But it is considered at this point, despite the criticism that's seen as inevitable from the Israeli Prime Minister's far-right allies, that they're saying that they will vote against this deal, but it's thought that the deal will go through. They have to approve the list of Palestinian prisoners, which we still haven't seen as a final list yet, that will be released from Israeli jails in exchange for the hostages. And then once that has happened, we do expect to have the US mediators, President Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who he still relies on as an advisor, coming here from Egypt, from those talks. And then, in 24 hours, we should start to see the Israeli forces pulling out in Gaza. They should withdraw to the lines that have been agreed upon with Hamas. We haven't seen a map of that made public at this stage. It's understood that Israel will remain in control of 53% of the Gaza Strip. It will be pulling its forces out of Gaza City. And then we also have this influx of aid expected already. We're starting to see pictures circulating on social media of aid convoys making their way towards the border in the expectation that all the crossing points will open and there can be this surge of aid going in. And there'll be a 72-hour period for Hamas to return the hostages. All of the living hostages, it's believed there are 20 that they're holding who are still alive, have to be returned at once without any ceremony. ceremony, and the bodies of the deceased should be handed over too, although we've been hearing that not all of those bodies will be returned. It's thought the hostages could come back, according to Israeli sources, on Sunday or on Monday, and that should be when President Trump is in Israel. He has said he's going to come here. We think that will be on Sunday to give an address to the Israeli parliament.
Yolande, I want to just pick up on that really important news that you've just mentioned there at the very beginning. Egypt's Al-Kahrain news agency saying that the Gaza ceasefire agreement goes into effect, because my understanding is we're just looking at the skyline of Gaza and we do continue to see smoke. Does this mean if the ceasefire agreement is in effect now and yet the Israeli cabinet is still to vote on this, is there therefore a momentum to get this agreed and done, regardless of what the hardliners within Israel's cabinet say?
There's been incredible momentum through this week with this international pressure that has been brought to bear, particularly from the US, Israel's closest ally, which has leverage over it after all, and also over the other mediating countries from the region, Qatar and Egypt in particular, but also Turkey. They all have had leverage over Hamas, have been pushing to get this deal across the line quickly to make the most of this opportunity. There is still so much that has to be agreed from the 20 points that were laid out by President Trump in his original plan. That looks to what happens in Gaza after this war. But this is an initial phase in which we will see the hostages being returned, something that Israelis have wanted so desperately, in exchange for those Palestinian prisoners being released. Palestinians also, desperate to see some of these detainees from Gaza returning home. 1,700 expected to be released as part of this deal, as well as 250 of the Palestinian prisoners who are serving life sentences. Hamas has been demanding some names who are very difficult for Israel to accept, and yet we have got to this stage. These all seemed like, insurmountable obstacles for months. We've known that these were going to be the procedures that would be followed, more or less. But now there has been this huge step forward to end 2 years of war.
Yolande, thank you so much. And it just shows how complicated and delicate this is, because even now, just before we speak to Rushdie Abu Alouf, we are hearing lines that when it comes to the ceasefire, we're hearing from Egypt's president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, saying that an agreement is reached to establish a ceasefire and end the war in Gaza after 2 years of suffering and woe. But when it comes to, and that's coming from the Reuters news agency, also from the Reuters news agency, an official in Netanyahu's office is saying that the Gaza ceasefire will come into effect after the deal is ratified this evening by the government. So even now, as we come to the wire, Rushdie, there is still so much that is very delicate, given how long and how complicated this has been. But from the people that you've been communicating in Gaza, there is cautious optimism.
Yeah, they are, because the airstrikes and the explosions continue and echoing the sense of, joy and celebration in Gaza. And I mean, imagine in Gaza City, like the people are in the street celebrating, and in the background, there is still Israeli drones are buzzing over their heads, and Israeli tanks are firing smoke bombs to some of the area and artillery shells. So the people do try to, celebrate. But there is still not only the sound of bombing, but the sound of frustration, because they are not sure that this plan will go as they like, and the war will end, because there is a great deal of, suspicious, not only from the Palestinians in Gaza, but from Hamas, that Israel might not continue after they got the only, card within Hamas' hand is the Israeli hostages. So it is very mixed feeling, between the joy and the fear.
And of course, mixed feelings, glimmers of hope, cautious hope, but there is still much that needs to be worked out, and not least when it comes to the release of Palestinian prisoners, who they are, Because that is a big question mark. There are some that Hamas want released that Israel simply will not agree to.
Well, even the first stage, the Hamas until now they haven't received the names of the people that they're demanding Israel to release. They knew that the deal is saying about 250 prisoners who life sentence in the prison, and 1,700 Palestinians from Gaza who were arrested after 7th of October will be released. Hamas were demanding some names for senior Palestinian, leaders who are held in the Israeli jail. We are aware of a list of 7 names that Israel until last night were refusing even to discuss the issue. Now we understand from Hamas that there will be discussion over these names, which is very important for Hamas, including 2 of the most senior figures within the military wing, and they knew that it is very hard for Israel to release them, and they might not. Other details related to the location of where Hamas is holding the hostages, and they finding the bodies, because Hamas said that they need time in order to communicate with the teams in the ground, and in order to do this they need a period of calm. They need Israel to stop flying their drones over Gaza so they can move freely. They need Israel to pull out the tanks from the city center to the line that agreed upon. Well, I see some reports in Israeli media saying that Israel would keep 53%. I heard yesterday from the mediators that they agreed to a 40% of Gaza, the yellow line where Israel will withdraw. So a lot of details that is still unclear, but we understand that they agreed to set up what is called, crisis operation room, where involve the Qataris, the Egyptian, and might be the Americans as well, to deal with all the complicated issue on the ground. And Egypt might send, logistical team to enter Gaza and help with the process of handing over the hostages and the prisoners. Still, all of the details has not been confirmed officially by all of the parties, but we are expecting a ceremony that is not involving a signing or Hamas delegation or the Israeli delegation. It is going to be a ceremony that involving the Qatari, the Egyptian, the Turkish, and the American, some sort of, an official announcement for the deal. The timing for when the ceasefire will begin, last night I heard it's at 12 o'clock today, but then later on, Hamas said that Israel said that they need to be able to approve it within the cabinet first before it goes into effect. But it will be announced in this ceremony the exact time for when Israel has to stop the bombing of Gaza.
Indeed. And Rushdie, I'm going to pick up on that. But for the time being, Rushdie Abu Alouf, our Gaza correspondent, joining us from Istanbul, where he's now based, of course, in Turkey. And our thanks also previously to Yolande Nell, who was joining us from Jerusalem. A lot of moving parts. And just on that point, when it comes to the ceasefire, just to explain that when it comes to the negotiations that were taking place in Egypt, Egypt's president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, saying that an agreement has been reached to establish a ceasefire and an end to the war. But as we say that, also from the Reuters news agency reporting that Benjamin Netanyahu's office is saying that the ceasefire will come into effect after the deal is ratified this evening by the government. Our understanding is that the cabinet, still the Security Council cabinet of the Israeli government, yet to vote on this. And we know that there's a lot of opposition from Israel's hardline finance minister. So that when it comes to the ceasefire, even that at the moment is still unclear. So clarity is what we need. Let's talk to Shaina Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council. Shaina, good to see you. There are still so many moving parts to this, but are you, can we say, hopeful that we are on the brink of at least some kind of resolution to this?
Absolutely. This offers a glimmer of hope. After 2 years of devastation and death and destruction and displacement throughout Gaza. And we need to make sure that spoilers do not disrupt this process, and that we not only continue through phase 1, but complete all of the phases and work towards a sustained, lasting solution that leads to peace and justice for people, for all Palestinians and Israelis.
And when it comes to those spoilers, there's still an awful lot to work out. And even now, as we speak and discuss a potential ceasefire, which the Egyptians are saying has already been implemented, but we're still seeing smoke rising from Gaza. What that you are concerned about that need to be ironed out?
Well, of course, understanding what the specifics are of each of these phases. But for us as the Norwegian Refugee Council, we have been blocked from bringing in aid to Gaza for more than 7 months. And so we hope that this will give an opportunity for us to resume bringing in aid, and for us and all humanitarian partners working throughout Gaza to scale up our operations, bring in the hundreds and hundreds of truckloads of aid, thousands of truckloads of aid that have been waiting to enter for months on end, and have access throughout all of Gaza to deliver assistance to people who are in need wherever they are.
And Shaina, as somebody who understands the situation on the ground in Gaza, of course, you're not able to get aid in now, but the rebuilding of this strip of land is going to be absolutely overwhelming potentially, and the governance mechanism. Do you understand? Can you offer us some insight into what the Trump plan will envisage for the governance of Gaza?
We don't have a lot of clarity on what the Trump plan envisions. Of course, there was in the 20-point plan that was shared publicly last week or the week before, it discussed some type of transitional body before potentially handing over to the Palestinian Authority. We need to ensure that Israel abides by the International Court of Justice's 2024 ruling and that the occupation comes to an end. We need to ensure that Palestinians have the right to are able to exercise their right to self-determination, and we need to ensure that the reconstruction process in Gaza is Palestinian-led, that Palestinians, particularly those who have survived the last 2 years of hell in Gaza, have the opportunity to dictate what their future and the future of Gaza looks like. They are there, they will remain there, and they should have a voice in determining what that future looks like.
Shaina Lowe from the Norwegian Refugee Council, thank you very much for your opinions there. Much more coming up on this, of course, here on BBC News, because there are so many moving parts. We are going to take a short break around the world, across the UK. You're with BBC News. Okay, you're with BBC News.